Brad Seaver's life had always been intertwined with the spirit of baseball, but his journey to the big leagues was anything but smooth. Growing up in Davidson, North Carolina, he found solace in the sound of a bat meeting the ball and the cheers echoing from local ballparks. His father, Henry Seaver, a dedicated accountant, supported Brad's athletic aspirations but emphasized the value of education and stability. Henry's insistence on a backup plan meant Brad would split his time between baseball and learning the ropes of accounting at his father's firm. In high school, Brad stood out as a star athlete, forming an inseparable duo with Tim Wilson, the team's elite pitcher. Scouts began to take notice, but when the draft came, Brad's dream to immediately play pro ball was tempered by a harsh reality: no signing bonus and a late-round pick. His father's persuasive argument for college made sense, though it meant deferring the path he had envisioned for himself. At Cleveland Community College, Brad sharpened both his mind and his game, setting the stage for future opportunities. The years at college paid off when Brad's performance led to a better draft position and a significant signing bonus with the St. Louis Cardinals. But fate twisted his career, starting with an unexpected trade to Atlanta and a series of heartbreaks that tested his resolve. Relationships bloomed and fell apart. Successes in baseball were mirrored by personal failures that pushed Brad to the edge. Yet each setback became a lesson, each victory a testament to his relentless spirit. Brad Seaver sat by the window, watching the sun dip behind the horizon. The minutes ticked by slowly as he waited to leave for the stadium. Glancing at the worn gym bag resting near his feet, he opened it to ensure his gloves and cleats were inside. This careful ritual had become ingrained in him ever since they had been stolen during his youth club days. From that point onward, Brad always brought them home after every game, cementing a habit born from that one unforgettable time when he overlooked checking his bag and had to play with borrowed gear, a night that led to a series of fielding mistakes and a frustrating game at the plate. Since then, he never left anything to chance, checking and double-checking his equipment before every outing. After confirming his gear was secure, Brad looked back toward the kitchen. He was grateful Kimberly, his wife, was there. She didn't travel with him as much anymore, and when he was home, she seemed to be away more frequently. Brad never asked her where she went, fearing she might leave him for good. The thought of Kim leaving brought back painful memories of his first marriage. Brad once believed his first wife, Cindy, was his soulmate, but that turned out to be false. Cindy had secretly cheated on him and eventually left to be with her new partner. But when he met Kim, Brad put those dark times behind him. He loved Kim more than anything and refused to think ill of her. When he looked at her in the kitchen, she appeared as beautiful as when they first met, a year after his heartbreaking divorce. After 11 years on the team, Brad felt exhausted. His career had been better than some, but not as remarkable as others. He wanted to retire last year, but Kim had convinced him to sign a contract extension. With a mix of sadness and relief, he realized tonight's game would likely be his last. Although he had 1 year left on his contract, Brad wanted out. Tonight was Game 4 of the World Series, and his team, the Tampa Bay Rays, were trailing 3-0. The series hadn't been competitive so far, with Tampa losing the first game by 7 points, the second by 5, and the third by 11. "Think you'll play tonight?" Kim asked from the kitchen doorway. "No." Brad shook his head. "I haven't played yet, and there's a reason for that. I've had a lousy season. I'm only hitting .209 and have made 15 errors. I haven't played well since the All-Star game. I'll miss playing, but I'm glad it's almost over. Even if I didn't retire, I'm sure the Rays would drop me after this season." "You're not being fair to yourself, Brad," Kim said. "The Rays made the playoffs by a single game. You had 5 key hits in August and September that secured wins. Plus, you saved a game by robbing Robbie Baylor of a home run with that catch in left field. And in Game 2 of the wildcard series, you tied the game with a pinch hit single and the Rays won." "I love how you always defend me," Brad said, genuinely touched by her praise. Still, he wondered if she would push him to play another season. "But let's be realistic. They won't play me. It would be nice to get into at least one World Series game." Kim smiled. "Remember, it's not over until it's over," she said with a chuckle. She loved quoting Yogi Berra's sayings. Brad loved his wife deeply, but her constant absences troubled him. It made him anxious, but he was too scared to ask why. He feared that if he did, she might not come back. With the season almost done, he hoped they could spend more time together. Brad double-checked his gym bag and looked out the window again. The city lights were starting to glow. He reflected on his career, which had been a mix of highs and lows. Brad could have turned pro right out of high school, but chose to enroll at Cleveland Community College in Shelby, North Carolina, for an associate degree in accounting at his father's urging. His father ran a small accounting firm in Davidson, North Carolina, near Charlotte. Brad enjoyed working with numbers and spent part-time hours assisting his father, Henry, mostly during tax season and summers. He prepared basic tax returns and did general bookkeeping. It didn't pay much, but his father allowed him plenty of time for baseball. Brad went to North Davidson High School, where he was one of the team's 2 stars. Tim Wilson, a pitcher, had been on the team since his freshman year and lost only 7 games in 4 years, with 2 of those losses due to errors not of his own doing. Brad was also a starting player and scored 397 points in his freshman season while playing center field. When both graduated, they were drafted by major league teams. Brad was picked by the Cleveland Indians in the 27th round, while Tim was drafted in the 10th round by the New York Mets with a $50,000 signing bonus. Tim signed right away, but Brad received no bonus. He wanted to sign with Cleveland and play, but his father persuaded him to go to college. Henry told Brad he could continue playing baseball while earning an associate degree in accounting. Henry was confident that after 2 years, Brad would be drafted again, but in an earlier round this time. Following his father's advice, Brad enrolled at Cleveland State University, studying accounting and playing baseball. He excelled academically with a 3.8 GPA and hit .407 in his sophomore year. Just as Henry predicted, Brad was drafted, this time in the 6th round by the St. Louis Cardinals. After hiring agent Abe Schultz, Brad secured a $75,000 signing bonus. The Cardinals promptly assigned Brad to the Peoria Chiefs, a Class A team in Illinois. Brad vividly remembered his first day with Peoria, feeling extremely nervous, but the manager, Buck Springer, quickly reassured him. "I know you're probably a bit anxious, Brad," the manager said warmly. "So I'll have you sit on the bench for a few days to get used to how we do things." In the 9th inning of that first game, Buck made an unexpected move and called Brad in as a pinch hitter. With 2 outs and 2 men on base, Brad worked the count to 3-2 before smashing a home run over the right field wall, securing a 7-3 victory for Peoria. As Brad was changing after the game, the manager walked over and patted him on the back. "Nice hit. You'll do well here, kid," the manager said. Brad, still trying to process what had just happened, turned to Ray Swanson, the first baseman in his 2nd season with the team. "I don't get it," Brad admitted. "Skipper told me I'd be sitting out for a few days before he used me." Ray smiled knowingly. "Skipper does that with every new player. He wants you to relax while he figures out where to place you when it counts. He needs to see if you can handle the pressure of playing pro." Brad's brow furrowed. What if I'd messed up? Ray's expression softened. He just wanted to see how you'd respond. You stayed patient and waited for your pitch. That's exactly what he wanted to see. "I think you're going to do well," he said, reassuringly. 3 weeks later, Brad faced the business realities of baseball. He was traded to the Atlanta Braves, who assigned him to their Double-A team in Pearl, Mississippi. This move surprised Brad, given that St. Louis had just paid him a $75,000 signing bonus. He soon found out he was part of a 4-player trade that sent 2 Double-A pitchers and him to Atlanta in exchange for a Triple-A pitcher who was promoted to the majors. St. Louis needed the extra pitching as 2 starting pitchers were on the injured list. Pearl, a suburb of Jackson, Mississippi, was an entirely new experience for Brad. However, he adapted quickly and became a core player. It was there that he met Cindy Bremerton, a classic Southern belle, and they soon started dating exclusively. Brad should have been alerted when Cindy expressed her dislike for Pearl and her desire to leave, but he was too in love to see it. By season's end, Brad and Cindy were married, coinciding with his trade to the New York Mets, who placed him with their Triple-A team, the Syracuse Mets. Initially, Brad planned for him and Cindy to stay with his parents for fall and winter, but when neither his parents nor Cindy were thrilled with the idea, they opted for an apartment in Syracuse. His parents' cold reception toward Cindy should have been another warning, but Brad ignored it. They later admitted they didn't trust or like Cindy. While the fall was beautiful, the winter was harsh. Still, Brad was content, believing Cindy loved him as much as he loved her. Brad then faced 2 tough life lessons. First, he learned that not all wives are faithful. Second, he realized that in pro baseball, value is determined by batting averages and slugging percentages. Spring training went well, and Brad felt secure in his spot. As the season progressed, he remained with the Syracuse Mets, even after roster changes. In the first 2 months, he wasn't a regular starter, but often came in late for his defensive skills and as a pinch hitter. At that point, Brad was hitting .254 with 3 home runs and 17 RBIs, and he hadn't made a single fielding error. In early June, Tim Wilson, his high school teammate and a Mets pitcher, arrived in Syracuse to rehab a broken left index finger he injured in a clubhouse fight. As a right-handed pitcher, the injury wasn't serious, but he was placed on the injured list for 3 weeks and sent to Syracuse for conditioning. On Tim's first day back, Brad invited him over for dinner, where he met Cindy. Brad, being naive about romantic advances, missed the clear signs that Cindy was pursuing Tim. 10 days later, Tim returned to New York to rejoin the Mets. Over the following 5 weeks, Cindy would occasionally take their car and disappear for a day or two, refusing to tell Brad where she had been and becoming angry when he asked. One day, Brad came home to find Cindy sitting with her packed bags and divorce papers. She had emptied their checking and savings accounts and taken all the jewelry he had given her, including the diamond engagement ring that had belonged to his grandmother. Her trips had been to New York to see Tim, and she planned to move in with him and marry him once the divorce was finalized. Cindy seemed to enjoy humiliating Brad and was as cruel as could be. "You're such a fool, Brad," she sneered. "I only married you to get out of that backwater town in Mississippi. I never intended to stay with you." Brad fought back tears. "I thought we loved each other." "Don't be naive," Cindy snapped, thrusting the divorce papers into his hands. "I'm going to succeed in this world, and you won't. Tim told me that management doesn't believe you'll ever make it to the majors. They're keeping you on the team for a couple of years, hoping for a trade. If that doesn't happen, they'll cut you loose." Brad watched Cindy carry her suitcases out of the apartment and out of his life. The worst part was that Brad believed her. The word devastated didn't come close to describing how he felt. He'd only had 2 serious relationships before marrying Cindy, and even though he had ended one of them, he took both breakups hard. Losing Cindy to Tim pushed him into deep despair, and his performance on the field plummeted. 2 weeks after Cindy left, the Syracuse Mets demoted Brad to their Binghamton Rumble Ponies team. After 2 days in Binghamton, Brad was ready to quit baseball and go home. Luckily, Binghamton's manager, Roy Miller, knew how to handle young players. He had seen it all: homesickness, substance misuse, preppy attitudes, and broken relationships. Roy convinced Brad to stay for 2 weeks and encouraged him to turn his sadness into anger directed at his soon-to-be ex-wife. Roy also helped Brad find a lawyer who got Cindy to return half of the withdrawn money and convinced her to give back the engagement ring. Brad funneled all his anger and energy into baseball. Over the next 2 weeks, he hit .394 with 4 home runs and 19 runs scored. By the end of the 2 weeks, Brad was fully invested in the game again. He finished the season with a .313 average, 19 home runs, and 43 runs scored. That winter, the Mets traded him to Detroit, which initially upset him. However, after speaking with his agent, Brad realized that Detroit planned to start him with their AAA team, the Toledo Mud Hens. It was in Toledo that he met Kimberly Anna Samuels. She was working at the hotel where Brad checked in upon his arrival. Kim had emerald green eyes and silky brown hair pulled back into a ponytail. Brad had initially been rude to her when she explained that the hotel offered a 1-week discount for Mud Hen players. Brad, still harboring anger and bitterness, treated her poorly. Kim's smile faded as she apologized and returned to her work. For the first time since Cindy left, Brad felt guilty about his behavior. After a few awkward minutes, Brad muttered an apology, admitting he was in a bad mood. Kim's smile returned, and she mentioned that most players find their own apartments or move in with teammates after the first week. During the first few days of practice, Brad concentrated on his batting and fielding. Yet, he couldn't stop thinking about Kim. He found reasons to visit the front desk whenever she was working. On his 5th day in Toledo, Brad arranged a room with Tyler Wilson, the catcher, but he stayed one more night at the hotel. Before checking out, he asked Kim for her phone number and a date. She happily agreed to both. When the Mud Hen season began, Kim sat in the wives and girlfriends section at Fifth Third Field, their home stadium. Brad was amused by the stadium's name, imagining what had happened to the first 4 Third Banks, until a reporter explained it came from the merger of Fifth National Bank and Third National Bank. Kim became a fixture at Brad's games, always sitting in the same spot. Their relationship blossomed, and Brad would look for her before each at-bat, sharing a smile and a wave. Brad had an impressive season, with 298 runs scored, 94 RBIs, 29 home runs, and a league-leading 6 triples. With 2 weeks left in the Major League season, Brad was called up to Detroit's main team. Unfortunately for Kim, the final 6 games of the season were on the road. Brad performed respectably, making 3 substitute appearances, recording 1 hit in the 8th inning, and playing left field for defensive purposes. He even managed to throw out a runner attempting to go from first to third on a blooper between him and the center fielder. A month after the season ended, Brad and Kim got married. They rented an apartment for a month and began their life as newlyweds. Soon after, they had to leave their place in Toledo and move to an apartment near Comerica Park in Detroit. Brad began spring training with the Tigers, and when the final team selections were made, he became an official Detroit Tigers player. Brad played for Detroit for 6 seasons, with his best performance in the 6th season when he had 281 at-bats, 94 RBIs, and 22 home runs. He also earned a Gold Glove, achieving a .998 fielding average, and was named to the All-Star team. Brad knew, however, that his selection was due to the rule requiring at least 1 representative from each team, and since Detroit lacked standout players, he was chosen. Brad was content with his life, even though he and Kim discovered she couldn't have children. It was a tough blow for both, but they moved on and focused their attention on their nieces and nephews. Brad had both a brother and a sister, while Kim had 3 brothers. During the winter following his 6th season, Brad was informed by the Tigers that he had been traded to the Tampa Bay Rays. While Brad felt saddened to leave the Tigers, Kim was thrilled at the prospect of moving to Florida. The next 4 years brought success for Brad and Kim. Brad maintained a batting average around .270 and primarily played right field, occasionally switching to left. After his 4th season with Tampa, Brad began considering retirement. He felt it was time, but Kim didn't want to hear it. Brad often wondered if Kim simply enjoyed the status of being a baseball player's wife too much. She denied it, but Kim did make a valid point. The Rays had a strong chance of reaching the playoffs and possibly the World Series. Playing in the World Series was a dream for any professional baseball player, which led him to sign a 2-year contract. Despite that, Brad knew he could retire after 1 season if he wanted. The first half of Brad's 11th season was decent, but after the All-Star game, his performance started to decline, and by the end of September, he found himself benched. But as Kim reminded him, the Rays had made it to the playoffs and were now in the World Series. Brad checked his gym bag again and looked over to the kitchen where his wife was still busy. He hoped she'd come by after the game. With a sigh, he picked up his bag and stood. "Do you have to go?" Kim asked as she entered the kitchen. "Yeah, it's time to get this over with," Brad replied wearily. "Just remember, it's not over until it's over," Kim chuckled. "Right," Brad replied with a smile. "And when you reach the fork, pick it. Love you, baby." "I love you even more, baby." He kissed her, their usual goodbye ritual before a game. When Brad went onto the field for warm-ups, he was happy to see that the stands were already packed with Tampa fans. Yet a part of him felt sad knowing he would miss the game after retiring. Fox's World Series coverage commenced. Chip Fair began. Chip Fair here with play-by-play alongside Steve Ember as color commentator. We're in Game 4, bottom of the 9th inning. The Rays were hoping for a comeback. Steve took over. Leading 2-0 in the bottom of the 9th, they managed to get 2 men on base with no outs. But the Dodgers brought in their ace, Scott Sharman, who struck out the first 2 batters. Now, the Rays are down to their final out. Jose Antonio, who's batting .282 and has a .346 average against Sharman, steps up as Sharman prepares to pitch. Chip continued. First strike on the count. "Sharman's been dominant all season," Steve added. "With 35 saves and a 1.94 ERA, he's formidable. But if anyone can stand up to him, it's Antonio." Sharman pitched, and Jose fouled the ball off his ankle. "Ouch, that's painful," Chip commented. Steve interjected. "It's not just a minor hit. Jose is still down, visibly in pain. The trainers are out now, checking his foot and ankle." "That's not good," Steve sighed. "They're calling for help to take Jose off the field. Hopefully it's just a bad bruise, but we'll see." "Who will Joe Torrance send in to finish this at-bat?" Steve wondered. This is a tough spot. Making the final out of the World Series is any player's worst nightmare. "There's movement in the Rays' dugout," Chip said. "It looks like Brad Seaver has been chosen for this near-impossible situation." "I'm surprised by Joe's choice," Steve admitted. Brad hasn't had a strong season, hitting just .209. He does have 6 pinch hits this year, including one in the postseason that tied a game the Rays won. But this is still a challenging spot for anyone, especially someone who's struggled lately. The series could end right here. Brad stepped into the batter's box as Sharman readied his pitch. The ball came, and Brad swung and missed. "Wait!" Chip shouted. It was a tricky curveball, and the catcher couldn't hold on to it. Brad's still in this. Sharman winds up again, Chip continued. Brad connects with the fastball, but it doesn't have enough power. He's fighting like a climber, holding on by his fingertips. Scott pitched again, and the count went to 1-2. The crowd collectively held its breath. 9 pitches later, Steve leaned into the microphone. "This has turned into quite the battle, hasn't it, Chip? Honestly, I thought Sharman would take Seaver out quickly and the Dodgers would win the series in 4. But Seaver is fighting till the end." Dodgers manager Mattis made a quick visit to the mound to speak with Sharman. After a brief conversation, Sharman returned to the mound, signaled, and delivered the next pitch. Brad connected, sending the ball into the screen behind home plate. "On paper, this matchup is completely uneven," Steve commented. "But Brad Seaver won't go down without a fight. A solid hit could clear the bases, and even a single could mean a win." Sharman, looking tense, took a deep breath and glanced at the runner on third before throwing. Brad swung, and the ball met the bat with a resounding crack, flying deep into center field. "It's a long fly ball to deep center," Chip shouted, his voice brimming with excitement. "Rodriguez is at the wall. He leaps, but it's gone. The Rays win! The Rays win! The Rays win!" The crowd erupted as Tampa Bay players stormed out of the dugout and surrounded Brad as he stepped on home plate. The stadium was a sea of noise, with fans standing, clapping, shouting, and waving in sheer joy. A surge of adrenaline and relief swept over Brad as his teammates crowded around him. 10 minutes later, as he was about to leave the field, he scanned the stands, but Kim was no longer there. In the clubhouse, reporters bombarded Brad. "Were you expecting that curveball?" one asked. Brad, sweat dripping from his face, shook his head. "I don't try to guess pitches. I'm not good at it. I just focus on protecting the zone. On that hit, I had to widen the zone because I didn't want to hit it near the corner. I was lucky it wasn't one of Scott's best curveballs, and I made good contact." Another reporter asked, "What do you think of the Rays' chances in tomorrow's game?" "Well, the next game starts at 0-0, so we have as good a chance as the Dodgers," Brad said with a modest smile. "And one more thing. People predicted the Dodgers would sweep us at the start of the series. That's not happening now, and that feels great." About an hour later, Kim appeared in the clubhouse, eyes shining with pride. She rushed over and hugged Brad, her voice filled with excitement. "I'm so glad you agreed to the contract extension," she said. "You've always dreamed of playing in a World Series game, and now you've done it, and even won. I'm so proud of you, and I love you more than I can say." Brad's heart swelled. That night, for the first time in weeks, he slept soundly with Kim beside him, but when he woke up in the morning, she was gone again. Where could she be so early? He wondered, a familiar worry gnawing at him. At the stadium, the locker room had a noticeably different energy, more relaxed, confident, and energized. Brad was surprised and humbled to see his name in the starting lineup, playing right field and batting ninth, which was usually reserved for the pitcher. But since it was an American League park, a designated hitter was allowed. As the national anthem played, Brad glanced into the stands and saw Kim taking her seat. He tried to wave, but she didn't seem to notice. Fox's coverage of Game 5 opened with Chip Fair and Steve Ember at their usual spots. Managers Tommy Mattis and Joe Torrance have exchanged lineups. Luis Javier has finished warming up, and the Rays take the field, Chip announced. Tampa started Game 5 on an upbeat note. Ronnie Collins hit a single, followed by another from Corey Williams. When Brad stepped up to bat, the crowd erupted in cheers. "Listen to those Tampa Bay fans," Steve said, noting Brad's confident approach to the batter's box. Brad took a deep breath, feeling calm and focused. 4 pitches later, the count was 2-2, and Brad stood steady and poised. Chip's voice grew with anticipation. "Here comes the next pitch." Brad swung, sending the ball soaring deep into right field and landing it in the upper deck. The stadium exploded with excitement as Chip shouted, "That ball is gone! Brad Seaver hits a home run, extending the Rays' lead." "Seaver! Seaver! Seaver!" chanted the crowd. Brad, grinning with joy, gave a quick wave from the top step of the dugout. He's given the Rays fans plenty to cheer about these past 2 days. In the bottom of the 5th inning, the Rays loaded the bases with no outs. "And now Seaver steps onto the field," Chip announced as the stadium erupted. Fans were on their feet, stomping, clapping, and cheering at full volume. Steve chuckled. I wonder if Brad still has some magic left. I'd wager Johnson isn't too happy to see him in this situation, Chip replied. Definitely not, Steve continued. But Mattis is sticking with him and letting Johnson pitch to Seaver. Chip resumed. Johnson is set. Here comes the pitch. First ball. 2 pitches later, the count was 2-0. Scott interjected. Johnson's really cornered himself here. He's being too cautious with Seaver, and now the count is 3-0 with no room to put him. Chip described the scene. Johnson has the ball, steps on the rubber, shakes off 2 signs, and now he's ready. Here's the pitch. There was a crack of the bat. A sharp hit down the right field line, Chip shouted. It veers to the corner and takes an odd bounce. Steve followed up. Matthews is racing for the ball, catches up and makes the relay to second base. But 3 runs have already scored, and Seaver stands at third with a stand-up triple. Well, would you look at that? Steve chuckled. Seems Seaver's magic is still going strong. 3 pitches later, Thor Grundle strikes out, Chip announced as Thor walked back to the dugout. Next up is Roger Danby. He hit only .257 this season, but his on-base percentage was .364, which is exactly what you want from a leadoff hitter. Not to mention he led the team by reaching base 14 times on defense, Chip continued. Scott added, he's a scrappy player who battles at the plate and tests the speed of the pitchers. Bold or reckless, depending on your perspective, Chip remarked. Johnson checks Seaver at third and winds up, Chip said. Here's the pitch. It's a long fly ball to center, Scott called. Donner moves back to the warning track and makes the catch. Seaver tags up and heads home, Chip reported. The Rays extend their lead. The inning concluded when Bobby Sheffield grounded out to shortstop, bringing the game into the 7th inning. Torrance has decided to swap out Grundle for Randy Mixon, Chip informed. Grundle leaves the game after 6 scoreless innings and 4 strikeouts. A solid performance. Scott provided context. Mixon's record this season is 5 wins and 4 losses. He's more of a middle reliever, but if he can hold off the Dodgers for 2 innings, the Rays can bring in their closer, Jason Marino. That's likely Torrance's strategy, Chip confirmed. But the Dodgers' top lineup is coming up, starting with Sammy Bills, who holds a .294 average as their leadoff man, Scott pointed out. They call him Flamethrower for good reason, Scott said with a grin. He's built for power and speed and isn't shy about playing aggressively, already involved in 2 hard slides this season. Mixon winds up as Bills settles into the box. First pitch is low and away for ball 1, Chip narrated. Scott commented, not sure what Mixon's plan is, but staying on the outside might be a smart move. Mixon winds up for the next pitch, Chip continued. Bills lines it straight up the middle for a single, Scott said. Now stepping in is Thad Thorne, who's had a phenomenal season with a .310 batting average and 39 home runs, Chip noted. 4 pitches later, the count was even at 2-2. Mixon checks Bills at first and throws, Chip said. Thorne smashes a liner into the gap between center and right, Scott followed. Bills rounds second and heads for third, Chip called out. Seaver fields it cleanly and fires it to second, Chip added. Thorne slides in and is safe, Scott confirmed. Seaver's throw to second was closer than I expected, Scott commented. His defense has stayed sharp, even during a batting slump, Chip said. But now the Dodgers' bats are heating up. Thad Blanken is up next with 2 balls and no outs, Scott pointed out. Mixon's facing real pressure now, Chip observed. Torrance is heading out to talk to Mixon, Chip added. Will this brief meeting change anything? Chip asked. Doubtful, Scott said. Mixon's fastball and curve are solid. You may be right, Chip noted as Torrance returned to the dugout. Mixon will now face Blanken, one of the Dodgers' most dangerous hitters, batting .347 with 49 home runs. And Blanken's career average against Mixon is .427. The Rays aren't taking chances. They're intentionally walking him to load the bases, Chip reported as Blanken jogged to first. Ray Freeman, the cleanup hitter, steps into the batter's box, Chip continued. Mixon's first pitch is a strike, Chip said. A double play would be a game-saver here, Scott added. Let's hope so, Chip responded. Freeman swings and taps a slow roller down the first baseline, Scott described. Mixon rushes in, barehands the ball, and only has time for the out at first. The throw is on time, but Bills scores easily from third, Chip concluded. The Dodgers put their first run on the board with runners on second and third and 1 out, Chip narrated. As Hector Aponte prepared to step into the batter's box, Scott smoothly transitioned. We'd like to remind our listeners that Brandon Ford on East Atomo Drive is offering 0% interest financing on all new and used vehicles. Aponte is ready in the box and Mixon is set, Chip resumed. Mixon will need to be cautious here because Aponte is a reliable hitter with only 36 strikeouts this season. 3 pitches later, Aponte worked the count to 2, one with 1 out and 2 runners on base. This is where Aponte thrives, Scott noted, glancing at his laptop. Chip added, he'll be looking for a pitch in his wheelhouse. If it's not there, he'll wait it out against Mixon. Mixon winds up and delivers. Aponte swings and lines a single into right field, Chip called. Thorne scores easily, and Blanken is being waved home, Scott said. Seaver picks up the ball and fires a strong throw to the plate, Chip described. And Blanken is out, Scott exclaimed. What a throw by Seaver. That play wasn't even close. With 2 outs and a runner on first, Jordan Donner steps into the batter's box, Chip continued. Mixon looks a bit shaken, Chip noted. Catcher Jimmy Fox goes out for a quick chat to settle him down. 4 pitches later, Chip announced, Mixon walks Donner, putting runners on first and second with 2 outs. Torrance seems to be making a move, Chip said. He's signaling to the bullpen, and right-hander Greg Cole is coming in. It hasn't been a great season for Cole, Scott pointed out. 3 wins, 6 losses, and a 5.12 ERA. But he's been better lately, Chip added. He earned a save in the wild-card game and another in the ALCS Finals. This pitching change is sponsored by Roger Harper's Steakhouse, located just outside the stadium. Enjoy top-tier filet mignon, ribeye, New York strip, or porterhouse, all cooked to perfection. And don't miss Ladies' Night on Thursdays. Any woman accompanied by her husband or boyfriend gets her steak free. Plus, there's a 2-for-1 happy hour from 5 to 6 p.m. As Cole completed his warm-up, Ray Matthews approached the plate. Cole delivers the first pitch, Chip narrated. It's a deep fly ball to left field, Scott said. It bounces off the wall. Both runners, already in motion with 2 outs, score. Aponte crosses home and Donner rounds third, bringing in 2 runs as the relay throw is cut off. Scott commented, the Dodgers are showing signs of life, adding 4 runs in this inning. The Rays need to be careful, or they might lose their grip on this game. With 2 outs and no runners left on base, the Dodgers brought in a pinch hitter. Danny Cruz secured the final out to end the inning. Chip concluded, the Dodgers have narrowed the score to 7-4, but their momentum could carry into the next inning. In the bottom of the 8th, Bobby Sheffield hit a double to right with no outs. Brad followed with a single, bringing Sheffield home. He then stole second and advanced to third on a deep shot to right field, later scoring on another hit. Post-game wrap-up, the Rays were relentless, Chip reported. They scored 9 runs on 12 hits, and Brad Seaver was outstanding with 7 RBIs, a run scored, and an incredible throw that took down Blanken at home. It was an impressive performance by the Rays, Scott agreed. Tomorrow is a travel day, as the series moves to Los Angeles. Pre-game coverage begins at 8 p.m. Eastern with Game 6 starting at 9:05, Chip said. Thanks for joining us, and don't miss Game 6 of the World Series. The Rays typically didn't allow wives on the team plane, but with the series shifting, they lifted the restriction and offered seats to any wives who wanted to fly. Most agreed, but Brad wasn't sure if Kim would join. The plane departed for Los Angeles 3 hours after the game, making for a long overnight flight, but the team agreed that arriving early and resting for a full day was worth it. Brad sat in his seat, watching to see if Kim would arrive. He'd searched for her after the game, but found she had already left. Memories of his first marriage came back to him. With Kim absent, Brad took 3 aspirin for his headache and fell into a deep sleep. After arriving at the hotel, Brad managed to get 4 more hours of sleep before heading to Dodger Stadium for practice. The workout was light and relaxed. That night, Brad went to bed early and woke up feeling refreshed but still uneasy about Kim's absence. He couldn't shake the worry about where she was. When Joe announced the lineup, Brad felt relieved to see his name in right field, batting 8th. The tension among the Dodgers was palpable and evident throughout the game. Fox Sports Game 6 recap, what an unexpected turn of events. The Rays have tied the series at 3 games each, Chip said excitedly. Brad Seaver led the way once again. After his pivotal pinch hit in Game 4, today he doubled in the 3rd inning, setting up the Rays' first run and later scoring when Thor Grundle singled to right. Scott chimed in, Grundle hasn't had many hits this season, so that was a significant moment. The Rays held their 2-0 lead until the 6th inning when everything started to fall apart for the Dodgers, Chip continued. The Rays loaded the bases, and Seaver walked on a wild pitch before hitting a double to center that drove in 3 runs. Sheffield followed up with a single that brought Seaver home, and Roger Darby's hit into right field added more pressure. The Rays extended their lead to 7-0, Chip reported. At that point, the Dodgers manager decided to bring in Tito Velez, their second-best pitcher, with 21 saves and a 2.33 ERA, Scott noted. But a defensive miscue turned what could have been a double play into just outs at first and third, allowing 2 more runs to score and pushing the lead to 9-0. The Dodgers did manage to score when Freeman hit a homer to left with 1 out, Scott noted. Seaver added another single in the 9th, but was left stranded, Chip said. The Rays secured a 9-2 win. Now it all comes down to the 7th and final game of the series. Join us tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern for the pregame show, with Game 7 starting at 9:05. For Fox Sports, this is Chip Fair and Steve Ember. Thanks for tuning in. After the mandatory locker room interviews, Brad returned to his hotel room to grab an ice pack for his head and neck. He ran a bath and sank into it to relax. 20 minutes later, he heard someone in the other room. Just as he was about to get out, Kim entered and smiled at him. Brad felt surprised, but relieved. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" she asked warmly. "Like an old man," Brad replied with a faint smile. "I'm completely worn out. I'm going to take some aspirin and head to bed." "Good idea," Kim said, following him to the bedroom. She stayed by his side as he took 3 aspirin and a sleeping pill. Kim sat with him until his breathing became deep and steady. Then she quietly left so he could rest. Brad slept for 10 hours, but woke up still feeling tired, although his headache had subsided. Kim was right there as he stirred. "How are you feeling today?" she asked, concerned. "Still like an old man," he said, smiling, happy to have her there. He didn't care where she had been. Her presence was what mattered. Once the season was over, he promised himself they would spend more time together. But a nagging fear crept in. Was she waiting for the season's end to leave him? Brad didn't feel like eating, so they spent a few hours by the pool before he took a nap and headed to the stadium. The clubhouse buzzed with excitement, though it did little to shake Brad's fatigue. He wasn't at full strength, but felt better than the previous night. The final game of the series threw the sports world into a frenzy. Dodger Stadium filled up well before practice, with scalpers reportedly charging $2,000 per ticket. Brad had to cut his practice short when his headache returned. Sitting by his locker, he took his usual 3 aspirin and leaned against the metal wall. He considered telling the manager about the headache, but decided to wait until the lineup was posted. If his name was listed, he'd choose whether to play. His teammates came by to thank him for his contributions and assured him they wouldn't let him down, making it clear he couldn't sit this one out. When the lineup was posted, Brad saw his name in right field, batting 8th. The decision was made. He would play. 9th inning. "This has been an incredible pitcher's duel," Chip said as Andy Pitts walked to batter. Dodgers pitchers Kodai Tanaka and Tyler Bowen held the Rays to 1 hit, while Rays pitchers Jack Sullivan and Gavin Miller limited the Dodgers to 2 hits. Now the Dodgers have brought in Tito Velez for the 9th. "They're saving Charman in case they take the lead," Scott noted. Velez throws the first pitch, fouled off to left for a single, Chip narrated. Pitts takes a step off, but stays as Aponte fields it to second base. "It looks like the Rays might try to advance Sheffield," Scott suggested. "That would be smart," Chip agreed. Sheffield squares for a bunt but misses, strike 1. Velez throws again, and Sheffield bunts but misses for strike 2. "With 2 strikes, will they let Sheffield swing? I'd make him hit," Scott added. "A swing could end in a double play." "Here's the next pitch," Chip said. Sheffield bunts it down the first baseline. Velez leaves the mound but only has time to throw to first. The Rays now have a runner on second with 1 out, and Brad Seaver is up. "Seaver's bat has been quiet today," Scott said. "He's grounded out and struck out in his 2 appearances. He doesn't look great." 2 pitches in, the count was 0-2. "Seaver looks uneasy," Chip observed. "Velez pitches again," Chip said. Seaver taps a weak grounder between first and second. Bills and Thorne charge, but it slips through for a single. Matthews picks it up as Pitts is waved home. Pitts slides head first and is safe. The Rays take a 1-0 lead, Chip shouted. 2 pitches after Brad's hit, Chip continued. Pinch hitter Cleon Johnson steps up. He swings at a fastball, grounding to shortstop, flipped to second, and fired to first. A double play. Now the Rays are just 3 outs from one of the most remarkable comebacks in World Series history, Chip declared. The Rays led 1-0 going into the bottom of the 9th. Chip began describing the scene, but no one anticipated how the game would end. In the top of the ninth, the Rays secured their lead when Pitt singled, Sheffield advanced him to second, and Brad's hit drove him home. But now they faced the top of the Dodgers lineup. Sammy Bills walked, and the next batter hit a double off the left field wall. Thorne walked on 4 pitches, and Blanken was hit by a pitch, loading the bases with no outs. Ray Freeman drew a walk on a wild pitch. He then hit a sinking line drive, and every Rays fan must have felt like the World Series was slipping away. But Brad Seaver sprinted forward, dove, caught the ball just before it touched the ground, rolled over, and fired it to Williams at second base. Williams stepped on the bag and tagged out the runner from first. A triple play. It was only the second triple play in World Series history, the last one completed by the Cleveland Indians in 1920. This was nothing short of a miracle. The Tampa Bay Rays were crowned world champions. "Your thoughts, Scott?" Chip asked his co-commentator. Scott paused, a nostalgic smile on his face. "Ever since Brad hit that game-winning homer in Game 4, one scene keeps playing in my head. It's from the 1980 Olympics when the U.S. hockey team faced the Russians. With less than 10 seconds on the clock, Al Michaels shouted, 'Do you believe in miracles?' 'Yes.' 'Do we believe in miracles today?' 'Absolutely.' 'Yes,' Chip added, pressing his finger to his earpiece. 'Our producer has just informed me that the voting for Series MVP is in. And, in a surprise to no one, the unanimous choice is Brad Seaver. In fact, he would have been chosen even if the Rays had lost.' Scott nodded, admiration evident on his face. What a series for Brad Seaver. In 10 games, he had 8 hits, 2 home runs, and 14 RBIs. He now holds the record for the highest batting average in World Series history at .800. Back in the locker room, Brad answered every question from the reporters. Champagne was poured over his head repeatedly, and he was embraced by teammates, coaches, and even the team owner. But his mind was somewhere else, on Kim. She hadn't been at the stadium, and he could only hope she would be waiting for him at the hotel. After hours of interviews and celebrations, Brad showered and took a cab back to the hotel. His heart raced as he opened the door, only for his hopes to crash. Kim was not there. Brad waited into the night, his anxiety growing with each passing hour. But Kim never came. By morning, as the team prepared to fly back to Tampa, she was still absent. She didn't join the return flight either. At the start of the season, Brad had told Kim this would be his final year playing baseball. He wondered if that decision had driven her away for good. Arriving at Tampa International Airport, Brad was met by a huge crowd of cheering fans, which lifted his spirits momentarily. An even larger crowd awaited at the stadium when the team bus pulled in. But when Brad walked into their apartment and found it still empty, the loneliness hit him hard. Tears welled up, and he let them fall, accepting that she might have left for good. The next day, Tampa Bay officials hosted a victory parade downtown. Fans lined the streets, waving banners and shouting in celebration. But for Brad, the joy felt empty without Kim there. The following morning, Brad's agent called with news of a 3-week promotional tour. The schedule was packed, leaving little time for anything else. After a week, Brad had had enough. The tour felt hollow without Kim, and he was exhausted. Back home, Brad unlocked the apartment door to find it still and silent. The air felt stale, as if untouched for days. He glanced around and saw that nothing had changed. Sighing, he grabbed a cold beer from the fridge and sipped it slowly. The thought of staying there alone was unbearable. He decided he would head out to the farm, a 22-acre property with a farmhouse and a vegetable garden, long wilted for the season. It was the only place he thought Kim might be. Halfway through packing, the phone rang. His heart leaped as he hoped it was Kim. He snatched the receiver. "Hello?" he said, voice tight with anticipation. "Brad, I'm glad I caught you." The voice on the line wasn't Kim's. "This is John Walker." "Mr. Walker," Brad said, masking his disappointment. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you. Are you upset I left the tour? I couldn't keep up with the pace. It was too much." "No, Brad," John's voice softened. "I'm not upset at all. I understand how exhausting that can be. I called to see if we could meet tomorrow morning, say around 10. That works. I'm heading to my place near Arcadia, so it's not far to stop by your office." The next morning, Brad arrived at the Rays office at 9:55. He was shown in to see John Walker, who stood up, smiled, and extended his hand. "Thanks for meeting with me, Brad." They shook hands as John continued. "First, congratulations on an amazing World Series. You've become a living legend whether you realize it or not." Brad shifted uncomfortably, blushing. "I'm not so sure about that." "Take a seat." John gestured to the chair in front of his desk. "I wanted to offer you something special. A new 2-year contract with a significant raise. Brad was taken aback, and for a moment the room spun. He took a deep breath, shook his head, and spoke. "I'm sorry, Mr. Walker, but I can't accept." John's brows knit in confusion. "Brad, I understand the regular season wasn't what you hoped for, but this contract includes a player-coach role. You're one of the best outfielders and base runners around, and not many can hit like you. We want you to help guide the younger players and stay part of the Rays family." Brad's eyes filled with tears as he dropped his gaze and shook his head. "There's a reason I can't do it. I have a brain tumor. It's inoperable. I found out just before spring training." His voice broke as he added, "I'm sorry I didn't tell the team, but I wanted one last season." John's face turned pale, eyes widening in shock as he reached out and touched Brad's arm. "Oh my God, Brad, I'm so sorry. Have you gotten a second opinion? I can connect you with top surgeons." Brad nodded slightly, still looking at the floor. "I've seen 3 different doctors, including Dr. Steinman. One of the best brain surgeons in the world. They all said the same thing. The tumor is deep, and removing it would liquidate me. They said I had about a year left. That's why I can't sign a new contract. I won't make it to spring training." Tears welled up in John's eyes, and he blinked rapidly. "Is there anything the team can do for you?" Brad stood up slowly and extended his hand. "No, I've made my peace with it." John hesitated, then walked around the desk and hugged Brad tightly. As the embrace loosened, Brad's thoughts drifted to Kim. If only he could find her, he'd feel truly at peace. But before he could take another step toward the door, a sharp pain surged through his head, and everything went dark. When Brad opened his eyes, the sterile smell of the hospital filled his senses. He saw wires connecting him to various machines and heard the steady beeping of a heart monitor. His vision cleared, and he saw her. Tears filled his eyes as he looked at Kim sitting beside him. She was here, and that was all that mattered. "You came," Brad said hoarsely. "I was so afraid you'd left me. I love you so much." Kim leaned forward, her eyes glistening. "I would never leave you, Brad. I love you more than you know. I waited for you. But now you need to let go and come to me." Brad's eyes fluttered shut, a soft smile on his lips as the beeping turned into a shrill alarm. A code blue was called, and the medical team rushed in. They worked for 15 minutes, but the machines went silent. Brad Seaver was gone. "Did anyone tell Mrs. Seaver?" one nurse asked, slightly out of breath. Mary, the head nurse, placed a hand on her arm. "Mrs. Seaver couldn't have been here. She died in January from cancer." The sports world was stunned and heartbroken when the Rays announced Brad Seaver's passing, but no one mourned as deeply as the Tampa fans. The Rays front office quickly organized a public viewing at Tropicana Field, where Brad's casket lay in state. By 6 a.m., crowds had already gathered, and by 7, police estimated the line stretched over a mile long. The gates opened at 7:30, and as the day wore on, the line continued to grow, forcing authorities to close roads and redirect traffic. The stadium was surrounded by flowers, banners, and signs expressing love and gratitude. With special permission, the viewing hours were extended until 2 a.m., with portable lights illuminating the grounds. At 2:30 a.m., police began ushering people out, and by 4:45 a.m., the gates were closed. The funeral procession started at 10 a.m., taking Brad's body to Memorial Park Cemetery, where he was buried beside Kim. On the day of the first home game of the new season, Tropicana Field was packed. The American flag, World Series championship flag, and team pennant were lowered, remaining folded. After a brief speech from the team owner honoring Brad's legacy, all 3 flags were unfurled. When the pennant opened, it displayed Brad's number, 23. The crowd erupted into a chant that resonated through the stadium. "Seaver! Seaver! Seaver!" It continued for 5 minutes. In February, the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown opened an exhibit dedicated to Brad Seaver's outstanding World Series performance. A 15-minute highlight reel set to music was so popular that it played every 20 minutes for the first 6 months. Cindy, Brad's first wife, had led a chaotic life. After their divorce, she married and divorced 4 more times, each relationship marked by substance misuse and turmoil. When she learned of Brad's World Series triumph, she became fixated, watching every game. News of his pass away devastated her, and she had to be sedated. Cindy later visited Brad's grave, leaving a single red rose before disappearing from public view. What happened to her after that remained unknown. In his final moments, Brad found peace with Kim, who had come to guide him. In the end, nothing was more important than being with the woman he loved, even if only in spirit. Together, they found eternal rest beyond the pain of this world.